All right, this is going to be hopefully a fun lesson on how to create your own custom shapes and create a shapes library using Photoshop. So I'm going to go to File and New, and I'm just going to create a 600 by 600 square image. So 600 by 600 pixels. We're just going to go with standard 72 resolution. I am going to set the background. It doesn't matter. We're going to end up making it transparent. So to go ahead and hit Create. We've got that in there. And then now we're going to start creating whatever it is that we want to make a shape out of. Now, you can use shapes, you can use fonts, you can draw it with paintbrushes, you can do whatever you want to make a shape. So let me just give you a simple example, and I'm going to create a new layer and turn off this background layer because we need it to be transparent, otherwise our shape will be a square. I'm just going to take a plain old brush here. So I've got my normal run-of-the-mill brush tool here. Nothing fancy going on. And I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'm just going to draw some weird shape, like a blob of some sort. I don't know why anybody would want this little blob, but let's say they do. My first name has a T, so I'm going to like make a thing coming from it. So it's kind of T-ish. I mean, it's not at all really. But anyway, so let's pretend this is some sort of shape that I want. It's not very pretty, but let's say it is. Then what we're going to do, in order to convert this to a custom shape, it has to be turned into a path. And brushes are not paths. They're literally just bitmaps or pixels that are just brushed on there. So to create a path from something that's drawn, we can hold down the Control key and click on the layer thumbnail here. So you get that icon right there. And that's going to put marching ants around this area. What we're going to do is turn those marching ants into a path. So you got your layers panel, you got your paths panel. In the paths panel down at the bottom, you can click this little button right here that makes a path. And it makes a work path. That's what we need. Notice it also puts a bunch of little anchor points all the way around it, so we indeed know that it is a path. Now at this point, because it's a path, we can turn it into a custom shape. That's under the Edit menu and Define Custom Shape. If you have a path selected, you can do this. Now you can't do this. That'll be grayed out if you don't have a path selected. And some people even suggest clicking on the pen tool just to be sure that if you are near a path that it turns it into a path. But anyway, so I'm right here, Define Custom Shape. I'm just going to call this T-blob because that's my T-blob that I made, and hit OK. Now in your custom shapes, so if you click on your custom shapes tool, which yours might be on a rectangle, go to the bottom. Up here at the top, if you press the drop down arrow and scroll down, whatever you just made will now be in there, whatever I called it, T-blob. So there it is. Now I've made a couple of other ones here. One I called a fancy T, one that I used a font that had sort of a little fancy thing on it, and then I put my letters in. I made a brush or a custom shape out of that. But anyway, so once you've done it, you actually don't need this stuff anymore. Now you can create your next shape. So now I'm back to here, and I notice that my path is still there. If I click off of it, then I'll be off of that work path, and now I'm back to this background. So once again, I'm going to turn my, make a blank layer and turn my background off. So you can also use fonts, but fonts are not in and of themselves shapes either. So let's say I want to do my initials. My initials are TS. I'm going to use the lowercase here for this one. So this is a font. Well, a font is not a shape. As a matter of fact, if you go to paths, you won't see any path in here for the font. We can turn it into one though by right-clicking out here, and then we're going to create a shape or convert to shape. You can also click Create Work Path, but I always just turn my fonts into shapes. So now that I've got it into a shape, if I go into my paths, notice the shape automatically gets a path. So now it's in here. All right, so that one's in there. Now if I wanted to do something to make this a little bit different, then I can create another new layer and then do whatever I want on it. So maybe I wanted to add some stuff to this, like maybe I want my T, the little crossbar, to be different. Then I could come in here and I could use my paintbrush and I could do whatever I wanted to it. Now bear in mind it's happening on another layer. The other thing I didn't mention that is kind of important is that you must have black. All shapes look black in the Shapes panel up there. That's for a reason, because you can always change the color of them. But if they're not on that solid black, then you might not be able to change the color exactly to the color you want. It'd be like a shade of the color. All right, so let's say I've done this. I've kind of blobbed it up a little bit. Now it's all right that it's not perfect, because whenever we convert this to a path, it'll fix it. Now I'm going to erase a little bit here. I got kind of a little bit crazy on that one, so let's just erase a little bit on here. And they're going to look different when they're paths because they won't be all pixely like this. Paths can't be. All right, so let's say that this isn't really all that pretty, but let's say that that's what I wanted this to look like. So now, same concept. I've already turned the letters into a shape. Now I need to turn this path here, which isn't a path, it's a brush stroke, which is, again, pixels. I need to turn that into a path. So again, hold down Control and click. That selects that little path. Pop into your Paths panel, and then click here on this little button. And then we've got a work path now of those. So in order to do both of these, I have to have both of these paths active. It might be to your benefit to pull this guy out so you can see what's happening. Okay, so I've got my letters, which see when I click on here, I get that path, and I've got my work path. So they're both selected. Now, for some reason they weren't, I might have to click on it, hold down Control, and then click on the other one. But both of my paths have to be selected. Now they both are, so I'm ready to create my custom shape. So I can go to Edit, Define Custom Shape. I'll just call it TS Thing and hit OK, and there we go. So it's not too super complicated. Now, if you have some cool fonts, you know, there's a lot of those nice dingbat fonts that are going to let us have the option to create, and we'll pop in here and do defont.com because that's one of my favorites, you know. But we can go into the dingbat fonts, and so there's like shapes that are in here which might be nice to use in a logo or something. So like in here, there's these little wreaths. That might be nice to put my initials in. So first check out the character set, which on here, let's say I really like this one here. So it's the lowercase a. I need to remember that so I know which one to use here in a minute. So that's a lowercase a. I'm going to download and install this Loris Nobilis font set. I better pay attention to that too, right? So I'm going to click it, double click the TTF file to install it, and then hit install. Again, if you don't have administrator permissions on the machine, you won't be able to install. And in my lab and in my room, my students do have permissions to install. All right, so we've got Loris Nobilis in here. Now I'm ready to use it in Photoshop. So I'm pop back over to Photoshop. Again, I'll just turn off these layers for the moment and click off of it. Then we're going to go ahead and add these other fonts. So I'm going to click on here, pick my Loris Nobilis font, and I want to type a letter A. And there it is. So there's my little wreath. Now this other work path is sort of bothering me, so you can always delete your path. You don't have to keep those work paths in there. All right, so I need to turn this into a shape. So again, right click out here to the side, convert it to shape, and then I can Control T and make this bigger. It's a shape now. It has points, so I can size it up. It's not pixels or anything. All right, so I got that in here. I'm going to hit Enter. Then I can add my initial. Let's say I was going to put a T in the middle or something. Then I would go in here, find whatever font I want, click, put my T in. Again, the T is not a path. Remember, it's a font still. So I'm going to have to turn this into a shape. So right click out here. Let me go ahead and accept that transformation. Right click out here, convert it to a shape. And now I've got that. So now I have to select both of the paths if I was going to make this into a custom shape. So when I click on the A shape, I have the A shape path. When I hold Control and click on the T, now I have the T shape path and the A shape path, and they're both selected here. So at this point, I should be able to go to Edit and Define Custom Shape. Now, occasionally, they don't show up like that. It's because I'm on my Move tool. If you switch back over to like the Pen tool or some sort of path tool, see how now all of my paths have that blue outline on them? You have to have that blue outline for the custom shape to work. All right, so now I'm in there, and I'll call this T Wreath. All right, so now I've got a couple of shapes. Let's say I want to turn all these into my own shape set, because right now what happens is as you add these in, it's going to add it to the bottom of your list. But then if you were to go switch to some other shape set, they're not going to be in there. And if you reset it all, they're going to disappear. So I definitely need to add these to my own shape set. You do that by using the Preset Manager. So under the Edit menu, you're going to go down to Presets and then Preset Manager. And you're going to set it to Custom Shapes. Now once I'm in here, it has all of the shapes that have been created. I'm going to choose all of the ones that are going to be my custom shape set. and I'm going to hold down Control so I can multi-select these. So I've got 5 of them. Now I'm going to click Save Set, and I'm just going to call these Tanya's Tees, and it's going to automatically put it in the Photoshop folder, which is just fine. But if you wanted to, you could also save a copy of it to your own folder, like your U drive or whatever. That way you could email it to yourself. Notice these custom shape files are CSH files, custom shape, CSH. All right, so now I got a copy of it in 2 places. But if I click on Done, now I can actually load up that shape set. So if I click on here, if it doesn't show in here, then you go load it. So since I've got a copy of it saved, I'm going to go to Load Shapes. I'm going to go to my desktop, or I can pull it from the Photoshop custom shapes. But I also have it in here. And there it is. And when I hit load, now I get my custom shapes. And I didn't replace the ones that were already there, so it just added it onto the bottom again. But that's pretty much it. And then to use it, you just click on one that you want to use, pick a color, and then draw it. That's it. If you want it to be a square, of course, hold Shift, and then when you let go, it'll put it in there, come up here, and you can change whatever color you want it to be. So that's basically it. And then you've got your own custom shapes that are portable. You just save that CSH file. You can put that CSH file in a folder. You can email it to yourself. You can share it with friends if it's just really good and you love it, you know, or whatever. So I think that for my class, we're going to be using our custom shape in order to put it on top of like a photo that we create or a project that we create. So let's say I was going to use this picture of me, and I wanted to put my mark on the picture. Then I would come in here, I would take my custom shape, I would pop it into this document, choose whatever color I want it to be. And then what you could even do would be to, let me click off the shape so you can see it better, would be to sort of put it in the background, like turn the opacity down. And then you can move it kind of like in a spot, like you would see like a watermark sort of thing on the image. And that way people know it's your image. So if you take pictures, you can tag your image, or on projects, you kind of tag your project so people can see that it's yours. You don't want it to be super noticeable, so you can turn that opacity down. So it's just kind of in the background. But there you go. So that is creating your own custom shape set and how you can take fonts, or you could have used other shapes. They'd already been shapes, so you wouldn't have to convert them to shapes to use their paths. But that's basically how you take fonts, or if you brush something, how you can take it, or any selection and how you can turn that selection into a work path to be able to use it. So good luck. Hope that helps.